a team of 300, but we have a big goal, which is creating equity of opportunity for all New Yorkers, and the levers that we have to accomplish that are working to connect adult New Yorkers with good jobs, helping New Yorkers launch and operate small businesses, and supporting thriving commercial districts. So spend a lot of time looking at how New Yorkers really work and want to work, and not just how the labor market looks on paper, but how people are piecing together income, building careers, and taking care of their families in an increasingly expensive city in real time. And when you dig into the numbers, you realize something big, which is that gig work, freelance work, self-employment are central to how this city moves. We had EDC pull a little data for this event, and it's actually interesting. There's a lot of gaps in our awareness of the gig economy through government data, and some information asymmetry between kind of regulators and folks who are concerned about the impact of this growing way of work and what we know directly from our service delivery, but I'll share a bit of what we do know. So according to 2023 ACS data, 159,000 New Yorkers were self-employed in entities that they created in their own businesses. That's about 4% of the city's workforce choosing entrepreneurship as their pathway. These people are starting LLCs, they're opening consulting practices, launching small brands, figuring it out step by step, sometimes with SBS support. They show up in our business solution centers every single day, and they're a massive part of the entrepreneurial pipeline we support at SBS. But the number of self-employed New Yorkers who do not have a registered business is even higher. And this includes the gig workers, the freelancers, the people making a living through multiple platforms. According to ACS data, again, it's a little aged at this point, we're looking at 2023, roughly 243,000 New Yorkers rely on gig work as their main income in a business or in with the means of connecting to that work that is not an entity that they created. So that's about 6% of all workers in the city. And that's surely an undercount because we see that that number hasn't changed significantly in more than a decade. As the apps have proliferated, the types of industries that New Yorkers are working in through those apps has changed. So at this point, gig work, we know it's not a temporary trend. It's a long-term part of our economic landscape, and it's a dynamic, changing part of our landscape. And the data also shows the diversity of the gig workforce. Besides industries, we have rideshare workers, childcare workers, housekeepers, creative freelancers, and people juggling multiple income streams across industries. And we see these stories in our workforce centers and our small business programming. Our immigrant New Yorkers show up heavily in the gig economy workforce. We see that more than half of all gig workers in the city were born outside the United States, but again, that is a huge undercount, we're sure, because immigrant New Yorkers are less likely to respond to the ACS census data. But it's very important to SBS because we also know, based on our own research, that immigrant New Yorkers are more than twice as likely to establish a small business, and so this guides how we develop our programming, both for workers and for entrepreneurs or folks with a business idea who are curious about what the rules and regulations are, how to create an entity, how to take the first steps in establishing a business. There we want to be sure that we are delivering these services with as broad an eligibility criteria as possible, but also with real sensitivity to the risk that individuals may face as they come into a government-run system. The data that we need to collect about our clients varies quite a bit depending on the funding source. And so our workforce system is federally funded, and for that reason, we need to collect sensitive data that may be a barrier to service and raise concerns for some New Yorkers, as opposed to something like our construction site safety training delivered with city tax levy dollars and more flexibility in how intrusive we need to be in terms of collecting that data on our clients. I wanted to share a couple of instances of intersection between our work recently and the gig economy. We have been hiring through our Workforce One system for transportation and logistics firms that are involved in e-micro mobility. I think we've hired about 250 former deliveristas to full-time jobs in transportation and logistics firms that are often Amazon delivery service partners or working for other large corporations, contracting with other large corporations. That hiring has been really welcome in Workforce One because it's a low barrier to entry in terms of skills. We are only able to match workers with work authorization or TPS, who would not have a challenge being verified in a federal system, but low barrier to entry in terms of skills, and they're able to move from jobs, say working for a delivery app with less security, less clarity about their access to the apps and to income, into full-time jobs in the transportation logistics industry, where we can then work with their employers to upskill them, connecting them to CDL and other kinds of training. So we've so far connected about 250 employees, workers, to transportation and logistics firms through Workforce One in that means. And in addition, we are very excited about the new policy proposals to expand childcare in the city, and thinking about our experience in supporting NYC entrepreneurs in creating home-based childcare businesses, our experience in certifying childcare businesses, because the sector is split between freelance workers kind of working often in the informal economy, folks in the unregulated part of the home daycare economy, because they're working with a small number of young people, and then larger home-based daycares and center-based daycare centers. Over the years, we have worked to certify the for-profit entities, for the most part, as MWBEs, so that they're eligible for UPK contracts and other kinds of work. And we're very interested in understanding and helping to support the development of those small businesses in the childcare space as we move toward universal childcare for New Yorkers in the Mamdani administration. And many of those will be folks who started in the informal economy or as gig childcare workers, taking advantage of this new opportunity. So we're constantly working to adapt our programming, keep evolving it. Another rationale for evolution of the programming is that the risk of regulation and the way the federal government uses the data is also shifting. So we saw, for example, the requirement recently, I think it began in 2024, that app-based payment companies provide 1099s to individuals who are maybe in the gig economy, so exchanging money on their platforms for work activities, and they're providing that to the individual workers as well as to the IRS. And then we see under this federal administration, MOUs between the IRS and ICE for enforcement data. And so all of this makes us think constantly about what we're asking from our clients when they walk in the door, what are the risks of that data collection, and is it worth the insights that we're gaining in order to serve them. Again, we want to cast as wide a net we can, because the city can't pick which business activity is going to be a big winner. We don't want to judge the importance of a particular economic activity to an individual household, and so we want to continue providing those services as broadly as possible. In 2025, FY25, that meant about 22,000 business education services to individual New Yorkers who were pre-startup. So gig economy, gig work is not only the future of the economy, it's very much been part of our last decade, and it's definitely part of the present. We're going to continue tweaking our work here to be sure that every worker, regardless of how they earn, has access to opportunity, to stability, and to a pathway that leads to the life that they're building for themselves and their families. And indeed, for operating businesses, we are working with them to help them take advantage of technology of multiple kinds. They want to take advantage of technology and not be taken advantage of not be taken advantage of by technology. And so we are providing education on technology systems, financial supports, and also a deep dive on financial analysis and record keeping, so small businesses can understand if there are concerns about the cost of participation in the apps, is actually balanced by the revenues that they're able to generate. So those are just a few of the ways that the gig economy intersects with SVS's current and planned work. And I'm really looking forward to listening in on the panel discussion and further conversation with all of you today. Thank you.
Our panelists come up. All right, sit in any order you like. I'm Mark Chisano, senior fellow here at the law school. As the dean mentioned, also a journalist working on a book about the gig economy, for which I worked app-based gig jobs for a little over a year. So maybe I delivered to one of you guys at one point. I hope you gave me a good rating. Thank you. Tipped well, I hope. But now in the sort of reporting process and more formal reporting process, and really glad to talk to all these people about their expertise about this obviously very important field. So Brad Landers, the New York City Controller, in that role in 12 years in the City Council. He's been involved with investigating and legislating on many aspects of the gig economy. Josh Gold is Senior Director of Public Policy and Communications at Uber, where he leads regulatory strategy, stakeholder engagement, and policy initiatives across Uber's northern region. Baber V. Desai is the Executive Director of the New York Taxi Workers Alliance, which was founded in 1998 and represents yellow cab, green car, black car, livery, and active dispatched drivers. Sean Abreu represents Manhattan's 7th District in the New York City Council, where he has sponsored multiple key gig app bills. Before his election, he worked for the New York Legal Assistance Group, the National Labor Review Board, and the Natural Resource Defense Council. And Jeffrey Bank is the Chief Executive Officer of the A La Carte Restaurant Group, a hospitality management company that owns and operates restaurants including Carmine's and Virgil's Real Barbecue. He's also founding trustee of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. So thank you guys very much. Just to start, maybe, and we'll go down the line starting with you, Controller, you could wave a magic wand. What's one thing you change about the gig economy in New York City?
Good morning. First of all, it's really nice to be here. It's funny, I told my wife where I was going this morning, and she's like, oh, the gig economy, that's so interesting. Didn't you used to do all that work on that? Like, what has that got to do with the challenges of the moment? And I think it could sort of feel like that, because there's so much going on from Washington amidst transition here, that I think it's easy to kind of lose the sense of sort of where this sits. And yet, of course, it sits in so many ways right at the juncture of many of the challenging issues that we are facing in an economy where more and more people feel precarious. And that's such a big part of what has motivated many dynamics within our politics. The gig economy is a big part of that. You know, we've set up an economy where we get your health care through your job. If you're a gig worker, you don't have health care through your job. We set up an economy where you come to be able to buy a home because, you know, you get your income check through your W-2, and if you're a gig worker, it's much harder, even if you're a well-paid gig worker like a freelancer, much less, you know, a deliverista. And so I do think part of what has opened up an economy that is and feels more precarious is related to growth of the gig economy, and therefore really appropriate to think about how that relates to what's happening more broadly in the economy and what New York City can do about it. We have taken some great steps here, and I'm excited to talk about them today, becoming the first city in the country to guarantee living wage, minimum wage pay for Uber and Lyft drivers, for deliveristas, to prevent freelancers from experiencing wage theft all the time. So those things are all good, and yet we can continue to see how these challenges continue to exist in the economy, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about it. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, well, I guess I'll just say one more setup thing. First, it's worth thinking about what's new and what's old, because gig work is not new, right? Garment work was gig work before organizing and legislation required that it become jobs. And employers would rather have kept it gig work and paid by the piece and not paid for people's health insurance and not given them long-term stable jobs. Construction work is gig work, and it's labor organizing and regulation that made that safe and turned it into family-sustaining jobs, and the same is true. Domestic work is gig work, and without protections, it will be like that. So, I mean, you know, Josh is at the other end here, but if I could wave one magic wand, to me, what we're mostly talking about today, app-based gig work, so especially and largely for hire driving and delivery work, those are jobs. And they ought to have a W-2. We ought to use an ABC test. They could still use their dynamite technology to match customers and rides, to match restaurants and food ordering, and pay people by the hour with the kind of protections that workers deserve so that they'll have health insurance, that they'll have steady pay. We don't have to choose between technological innovation and the increased gigging of our economy. So while I'm excited to talk about more things New York City could do, and this is not one of them, I would love to see at the state or the national level the use of an ABC test, which would have for hired drivers and delivery workers. Great, let's use technology, let's have lots of apps to match, and let's pay people, you know, give people the pay and protections and dignity that all workers deserve.
Same question.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mark and all, for having me here. Such an honor to get to sit next to our controller, not only because of his work as controller, but actually as a city councilman, led on our fight to win minimum pay for app drivers. So, you know, it's kind of just in response to your point, you know, it's kind of interesting. I mean, in New York City, at least, you know, when workers are misclassified, you end up really piecemealing their rights. And so we've established minimum pay for drivers in New York City. You know, drivers are exempt from overtime at the federal level, and so, you know, there's no like real legislative fix there for us. They are covered for workers' compensation, and that actually predates Uber and Lyft. Through a settlement that Uber and Lyft made with the state attorney general's office regarding a massive wage theft case for $328 million. The investigation came out of a complaint that our union had filed against Uber and Lyft at the AG's office. As part of that settlement, the companies agreed to also take paid sick leave. And our union won unemployment rights for Uber and Lyft drivers as employees at the state level, which is actually a very interesting story because the way that we won that is a member had come in and said he had filed for unemployment. Make a very long story short, he'd gotten back emails from the Department of Labor that essentially said to him that his case was under executive review. So basically, the Cuomo administration was holding up these cases and not allowing DOL to really process them. You know, we went to court, we were able to get things moving, and when they did investigate, I mean, as the controller said, what the courts found was, the agency found was that the companies did exert tremendous control over the economic life of the drivers, and the drivers were found to be employees. Now, during COVID, the DOL was still not processing these applications, and here's why this is important. During COVID, our yellow cab members who were found to be independent contractors were receiving less than $200 a week for unemployment, something like $178. Our Uber and Lyft members who were found to be employees were receiving about $1,200 more per month. And that, you know, for a working person, especially without COVID, I mean, this was a life-saving difference, right? And that's why employee status matters. That's why it's important to go after misclassification. And so we actually, though, the governor's office was still not allowing DOL to move these claims. We actually ended up having to go to federal court, and we won an injunction in order to force the DOL to implement its own law. And so I think if, for us in a very narrow way, I would say, in terms of the magic wand, three things. One is, we've been fighting for a bill at the moment to win protections for drivers for job security. Because along with low pay and real, income insecurity, on the other side, for drivers of this exploitation is constant deactivations, which is where you're basically fired. Deactivation is the fancy word that tech finance has come up with to basically describe a good old-fashioned firing of workers. But in our case, when drivers are paying for all the expenses, at the beginning of the day, it means that you're left unemployed, and at the same time, you have to pay for your expenses out of pocket, right? And so there's no income coming in for rent, and there's no income coming in for your vehicle loan. And it really is a pathway to long-term debt for thousands of drivers. As we speak, there's an average of about 70,000 drivers, yellow cab, Uber, Lyft, Delivery, black car, green cab, that are working across our city. 59,000 of them are working directly for Uber and Lyft alone. So they are, the overwhelming subsector in this industry. We need real job security for drivers. We need it for all workers, but especially for drivers who don't earn enough in savings and who pay for expenses out of pocket. And we also want what we see as hybrid pay model, which means that on every trip, drivers would be paid whichever would be higher, either 85% of what the passenger pays to the company, or 100% of the taxi and limousine commission regulated minimum pay rates, which the comptroller led on in the city council several years ago. We know that since those pay rates were implemented, Uber has taken a higher share of the fare from the drivers. They're both Uber and Lyft. And so while the minimum pay establishes a floor so that drivers are not sunk into a crisis poverty, the idea of minimum pay has always meant that's where we draw the line of poverty, because anything below it is a crisis poverty. But minimum pay is still not enough. Minimum wage is still not enough. And especially in an industry where there is wealth, there is income revenue coming in, and the companies do charge the public more. The minimum pay cannot become a ceiling for the workers. As the companies charge more, the drivers whose blood, sweat, and tears and actual expenses run this industry should be entitled to more of that pay. Lastly, two last things. AI. Well, it's a very exploitative industry, so I could go on with all my wishes. AI is a massive threat for us at the moment. We need a moratorium on AI. We as a society are not ready for the ecological impact of it. We're not ready for the social impact of it, with, in our industry alone, close to 200,000 workers looking at an existential threat. And I don't take it lightly that the forces that are behind AI in our country, many of them are the same ones that believe in mass deportation. And for us as a workforce that's predominantly immigrants and people of color, immigration is an economic policy. It's a human rights issue, but it's an economic policy. We see that as very much connected, to AI, especially in our industry. Last thing I would generally say, we need to take money out of politics. The story of what happened with the governor, that held up our right to UI. The companies did it first, but they had a political friend who rolled over and allowed it to happen. We need to divorce money and wealth from our politics, that we can have a real democracy. Without a civil society that is truly democratic, workers will never achieve real democracy in the workplace. Without democracy in the workplace, we don't have a strong civil society. And so we see the two as really going hand in hand.
Thank you, Jeff, your magic wand.
We can try. First off, I kind of feel bad. Anytime I come to an event, I usually bring chicken parm. It was a little early for me. I don't even know what time it is. I'm usually not up this early, so I apologize. And I ramble a lot, so you'll get used to that.
This will make us want to come to his next event.
This is kind of a pitch. I'm going to do a little bit from the business side. I respect and appreciate everything you just said about the gig employees and the workers. We're very supportive of that in our restaurants. When the third-party apps, food app, first of all, I'm sorry, I'm going to mention Grubhub and so I don't get in trouble.
There's many different gig apps.
Yeah, I know, but I want to, depending on how this goes, I think he's going to be happy. When the apps first came out, first one I knew was Seamless Web. And back in the day, I was friends with Paul Applebaum, who came over to me, and they had this idea that they would allow people who were working after work, late hours, to order dinner from their business, who was going to pay for it. And the only way they could get these orders if you were part of this app, because they had made deals with all the different law firms. It started out pretty great. The commission was about 7%, and since they were paying the credit card fee, 2-3%, you're really paying 5% for additional business that you theoretically or actually could not get. So people working in law firms and they were getting paid by the employee at 6, 7 o'clock, they're only allowed to order from Seamless Web. So it was new business for you, and more than happy to pay 5% for new business. Fast forward to today, not my words, New York Times, third-party food delivery apps are equivalent to payday loans, payday companies. And they probably do have the best intentions of increasing our business, but they really don't. I'm fortunate, I have a very large business. I'm in 7 different cities, 10 restaurants, 5 in New York City. I get to watch how the same exact app charges and handles their gig workers or the restaurants differently in different cities for the same exact product that they're offering. Way different, maybe not Uber. But with Seamless and DoorDash, it happens a lot. So we fast forward to today, during COVID, we had a little bit of a playing field that was a little bit level. City Council had made some laws to help out restaurants that were struggling under 25% occupancies, that they were even able to open. Delivery was a lifeblood for everyone. Thank God, the City Council stepped up, made the fees reasonable. After the emergency of COVID ended, I would admit, New York City was the last one to end this emergency. Every other city in the country was back to their normal fees. New York City was still in emergency COVID. I think the only reason we got out of it was Uber, Grubhub, and DoorDash sued the City Council. In complete fairness, I was subpoenaed. So, conversations like this, which I'm fine with. This will probably be part of the record.
I was subpoenaed too. So.
Yeah, I know, but the subpoena was, I started the Restaurant Association, Hospitality Association with 50 trustees. The subpoena was for the trustees of the Restaurant Association, but not limited to Jeffrey Bank. Okay, so it was kind of fun. Fast forward to where we are today. With a 20 to 30% commission that restaurants are charged, it's illogical that this works for any restaurants. The theory is you're bringing me new business, but you're really not. So if someone goes into Seamless and I don't eat for Carmine's, I love Carmine's, and puts in Carmine's, you're not bringing me a new customer, you're just being a facilitator, and you're charging me 20 to 30%. There's some guys that you could pay 5 or 10%, but you won't be marketed, but if you're not marketed, you're buried. If you're not in the Seamless Plus program, you don't get noticed. So it sounds pretty good that fees may be down to 10%, but they're not if you want actual business. I've gone through this 1,000 times. So you're at 20, 30% fees. The argument is that we're bringing you lots of business, so the incremental will really help offset the fees. At the end of the day, it'll work out. I have a full staff. I'm very fortunate that we can do dig on this all day long. It doesn't work for independents. They don't really realize it. They're turning a lot of dollars. They're not making any money on this. And their customers are getting addicted to the apps, my kids included. So you're first stuck on a bad commission basis. And that's usually where these conversations end. Oh, it's a big commission. The second part about this is the data. You don't really have access to your data. Because of this lawsuit and the new changes, I have access to my data, but I don't really have my data. So obviously the value, this is the big word we hear every 5 minutes, is data, 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 data. To show you how valuable the data is, there's a company called 7 Rooms that is in a lot of nightclubs and restaurants. It's a database. When you go to the club again another night, they remember that you only drink seltzer. I'm not gonna get in trouble. Okay, so she comes in. DoorDash paid $1 billion to this company for their data. Same thing that Instagram was sold for to Facebook, to show you the value of the data, even though it's just a simple word. That's how strong that is. So DoorDash is taking all this data. God knows what they're gonna do with it. I don't have access like that on my level. You then have a second problem. You have a company, Wonder, Mark Lord, great guy, met with him many times just to go over the company. And Wonder is a takeout store in a lot of different restaurants, and its specialty is offering different brands. It doesn't, but it could have like a Carmine's chicken parm, which I would never do. You get a pizza from this restaurant, Chinese from that, Thai from this, an aggregate of everything. Kind of a cute idea. Instead of doing a ghost kitchen, he's doing a brick and mortar. I was okay with that, until he bought Seamless. So now he owns Seamless Grubhub, never told this week, is owned by Wonder. So now, Wonder gets to know all the data of what's sold. So if he's looking at my data, Carmine's goes, oh wow, everybody loves Penne al Vodka. Maybe we should bring Penne al Vodka into Wonder and we could charge $1 less. Or maybe somehow in the algorithm that none of us ever understand, his restaurants will come up a little higher. They've only actually come out lower just because I had a conversation with them. If I had not had this conversation, they would be higher. When it first came out, if you put in Seamless and you wanted to find a Thai restaurant, somehow with 6 reviews and 4 stars, the Wonder Thai piece came up higher than a Thai restaurant that had 7,000 reviews and 4 stars. Some of that's starting to get corrected because of conversations. He means well, and I really do believe he's going to try and figure this out. But the point of my conversations and my wish list is that without the city government or state or federal helping, most restaurants don't have a fighting chance. I'm fortunate to have a big company. I'm fortunate in my hospitality alliance that we started to support independence, sort of help like this that comes out to help. I do believe there's usually good conversations when we meet with Uber. Josh is a good guy. He's met with Andrew, our executive director, trying to understand how to fix this. Our solution, which is not good for independents, can't really do, is we're a hybrid model. We have our own app so people can order directly from us. We have our own drivers that are part of our restaurant. We do use Dashers, an independent of DoorDash, to help get employees for delivery. That helps us when it rains, and all of a sudden there's a lot more deliveries and we can't handle it internally. And we do everything we can to remind people to come back to our app. And the only app that I push on people is Toast. Toast charges no fees. They're a point of sale system, and they also have an app. So if you see Toast in your favorite restaurant on that, you can order from that. If you're stuck in this weird world, go with Josh second, because I don't want to get in trouble.
Houseman, what would you do? What's your one, you have a lot of bills, but what's your one thing that you would change?
So one thing that I would, there's a bill in the city council right now that would end force deactivation. Right now, any deliverista, for instance, at a moment's notice, can be deactivated from the platform. They could have invested on a loan for their e-bike or for their car, for instance, and there's a lot of upfront costs. And at a moment's notice, they can be taken out. The council needs to do more on that if it had a magic wand. In terms of other things that we would do, before the city council got involved in this industry, there was a lot of basic protection and transparency that our deliveristas really deserve. Deliveristas couldn't stop, weren't entitled to go in the bathrooms in the restaurants that they serviced until the city council got involved. The city council, under my bill, was also able to establish basic pay transparency. Deliveristas didn't have access to how their pay got calculated in real time. They didn't have access to pay stubs that were itemized, explaining how their pay was calculated. They didn't get paid within 7 days after the pay period ended. It's actually on there. We had bills that changed that. When deliveristas won the minimum wage, I believe the apps retaliated and removed it. And that changed the way things were being handled. And so the tipping option at checkout was removed. When you go and order when you go and place an order at checkout, historically, apps would allow you to have the tipping option at checkout. After you get your meal, are you likely gonna tip? Probably not. And so that impacted the earnings of our workers. And so I also had a bill that forced tipping at checkout now, which we believe is gonna make a world of a difference in people's lives. So my last question, my last magic wand answer is also making it easier for e-bikes to not create a public safety hazard on our streets. And I think we can do that by regulating the apps over regulating them through licensing. But that's a whole other conversation.
Stupid
Josh,
idiot.
what would we do? What's our magic wand?
Well, first I gotta respond to my 4 friends on the right over here. So,
How does the base work? If you mention me, I go back, or how does it work?
I like to agree with the word to your right.
I was gonna say,
So,
towards your left, but yeah.
yes. So look, a lot of things to respond here. I think I'll start with is talking about the food delivery piece. Wonder also owns Relay, another company here. I will say in New York, 40% of restaurants, according to the city's own data, 40% of restaurants use their own delivery workers in addition to the apps. The commission, I checked it this morning on the way in on the city's website, the average commission is about 18%. That's about $5 per order for the restaurant side, about $7 per the order for the consumer side. Workers get paid about $10 per order. This is not Uber's data. This is data on DCWP's website. Just want to make sure we're going with all the facts here. All the way, should be all the way to my left, but all the way on the right over there. Let me say one of the wishes that I have, my main wish is that we start to talk about this the right way. Starting with the name of the forum here, the gig economy. Thanks to the folks on the right, really, and Uber went kicking and screaming into a lot of this. I don't think either on the delivery side or on the for-hire vehicle side, these are gig jobs anymore, in New York City specifically. There is a minimum wage on both platforms. There is unemployment insurance. By the way, Uber is the only company that pays into the state unemployment insurance fund on both the delivery side and on the rideshare side. Amazon Flex, Shift, Instacart, Lyft, Empower, which is an illegal operator in New York. None of these companies pay into the UI fund. Uber started paying in. We haven't heard much from some politicians about the other companies paying in, but there is unemployment insurance. Again, kicking and screaming, but there is unemployment insurance now. There is paid sick time through that deal with the Attorney General's office. There's free dental pay. There is paid vision through the Black Card Fund. This is a full-time job that now has a waiting list. On the rideshare side, there are 10,000 individuals signed up on a waiting list to get to work for Uber in New York City. On the delivery side, there are 30,000 individuals signed up to get to work for Uber Eats in New York City. Part of what the city has chosen, it's a policy decision, and so you can argue with it or you can agree with it, but the city has chosen to make these jobs full-time jobs and sort of do away with the part-time work. In the delivery space, we saw about 100,000 workers in 2013, and after the minimum wage rule went into effect, where the apps had to care about on-call time the same way we do on the rideshare side, the workforce shrunk. Workers get paid a lot more, but there are less of them. There are now about 70,000 workers versus 100,000 workers. That was a policy decision that the council supported. I think council member, or at the time, council member Lander was supportive of that, and I think the council was supportive of that, but that was a decision the city made to move away from gig work in this space and move towards a more full-time, better paid job. We can have a discussion about what other benefits are needed for the workforce. I think we're going to see just cause deactivation bills pass soon on both sides of the business. Uber has taken a sort of productive, I think, tone in having conversations rather than talking about it in public. And my hope is that we get to a good bill on both the rideshare and the delivery side. We've seen just cause deactivation in Seattle as well. And so I think we're moving in sort of a different direction from the gig economy in New York City specifically, and there are pluses and minuses to that for workers. I just want to respond to the council member on my right here as well. The tipping went away because there was a law passed in the previous council that requires that tips be displayed to the workers prior to them accepting a trip. And because of the way the minimum pay standard works, the rejection of a trip because it was low tipped would cause an increase in on-call time. I begged and pleaded with the council to change that rule. That never happened, and that's why the tipping went away. It's going to come back now that there's a law that's been passed to do that.
Last question.
Yeah.
So DoorDash and Grubhub are doing it illegally because they don't do that. So they've been doing it wrong the whole time.
So, sorry, DoorDash and Grubhub.
They have the tip before, not after.
DoorDash and Uber have the tip after if someone else is performing the delivery.
Grubhub kept it at checkout the whole time.
Grubhub kept it at checkout the whole time, and they've lost 90% of their market value. They were, sold.
They only lost like 10% in sales. That was mentioned at a hearing.
But this does bring up the point that the difficulty of regulating this on this issue, right? That there are unintended consequences.
Well, I'd say that the council has passed a lot of laws, probably more laws in the third-party delivery space than any other space over the past 4 years. The first round of laws was designed to give flexibility to workers. That was show the tip up front. The second round of laws had to do with the fees, and a lot of that is leftover feelings from the restaurant industry about when Seamless had with likely a monopoly, although Eric Frenneman said it wasn't in 2013. There was a lot of behavior that restaurants didn't appreciate, I think, in 2014, 15, and 16. There's a lot of competition now in the space. But we've had a series of laws on the delivery side. Some of them have unintended consequences. Some of them lead to the need for other laws that were passed. But it was not retaliation. It was because of the original law that required the tip to be shown up front, and then if you didn't have a tip, you didn't have to do that. So, and then on e-bikes, we do have local law 30, I believe, where we will in January have to provide the e-bikes. So that wish has been granted. So my wish really is to talk about it the right way. I don't know if this is, especially on the for-hire vehicle side, but more and more on the deliverista side, I'm not sure this is the gig economy anymore. There's a flexible economy where you don't have to have a schedule ahead of time. But this isn't the freelance, then Councilmember Lander passed Freelancers and Free Act. This is a different sort of economy in New York City, and we should talk about it as such.
And Controller, you're also engaged in legislating on Amazon's DSP delivery service setup, which is another way to provide delivery that is through an app. To this point of, are we engaged in absolute gig work or some other app-based work? What does the future of this space look like? Are even white-collar workers going to be in this space as well?
I mean, that's a really big question. I mean, I think this has actually been really useful for people seeing kind of how you get some shifts in the economy, driven in part by technology and then part by companies sort of using technological innovation to drive shifts in labor relations. And then, yes, in New York, we worked hard to address issues one at a time in a strange and shifting landscape. And I mean, I agree, we made a lot of progress, even though each time you do that, something new comes up. In many ways, deactivations are a response to the landscape that got set up by the minimum pay and other requirements. I'm actually going from here to a rally for the delivery, so Amazon does it differently, right? They outsource to these delivery service providers. They're still trying to push off the responsibilities that in a traditional W-2 model an employer has who is doing work for a company. I mean, it's a little crazy, the idea that these Amazon delivery drivers who wear Amazon uniforms, who drive trucks with Amazon logo, nonetheless aren't Amazon employees. They're not technically, in the way we're talking about it here, gig workers, because they're employees of these subcontracted companies, but they can't negotiate with Amazon over the conditions of their employment, even though Amazon is obviously the council will legislate on that soon as well. Where is this all headed? I mean, what are the odds that drones will be delivering packages and not people at some point in the near future? Pretty big. That's already happening in some Asian countries where they're using models for that to happen. What will we do if and when that starts to happen here, and how to navigate shifts in the broader economy? And what will AI mean for all kinds of sections of work? Big shifts are coming. That's the nature of technological innovation. What I think is important is to try to keep legislating around what do we want the work relationships to be. There are going to be people doing more and more care work in childcare, in healthcare, in personal services. We make that joke, that your old, retail shop is replaced by a yoga studio. But in some ways, that is the nature of the economy. Yes, we've shifted how we get you certain kinds of goods, where they're made and how they're delivered to you. And yet there's all kind of work to do for people to fill up their days with productive activity that they're going to wind up paying for. And if we can keep the baseline that we would like, and this is sort of why I gave my magic wand, to me, I'd like at least one building block. There's lots of building blocks here. We want technological innovation. We want entrepreneurship and creativity, and people to be able to start businesses that will thrill us and get us excited. And we want every single worker to be able to have a basic package of rights that are hard to come by and get eroded each time one of these new innovations takes place. And yes, those are like a minimum pay that makes sure you got a basic standard of living, safety and health protection so that you're not at risk, which keeps happening over and over again. I mean, who would have thought that even though the technology is so modern for deliveries, that people are doing it on bicycles, and in some ways that's great from an environmental point of view, but now it's a dangerous job. So, minimum rate of pay, basic safety and health protections, the ability to get health care, the ability to have a pathway to housing security, and yes, of course, the right to organize together with your fellow workers to form a union, to bargain collectively, because otherwise all the power sits with the capital-intensive business that shapes the conditions of employment, and you try to balance that, both by enabling workers to organize and through legislating to protect all those things. And we can keep doing that, like that's the purpose of politics, even as, of course, the technology is gonna outrun us, whether that's drones or AI.
And I think that we'll take some questions too, so think about one or two questions that you have. But Jeff, I also wonder if you could talk a little bit about the way that this has changed on the consumption side. Has the way that we consumed food changed? Has the way your food is prepared changed because of these delivery models?
The right answer is always to say nothing changes, we serve the same chicken parm every single day. But yes, that's happened from day one. I think the biggest change has been historically a restaurant, depending on your age, if you remember, only delivered in a 10-block radius. That was like the golden rule. And you always hear about it, like you lived on 71st Street and they stopped at, 72nd, like why can't I get food? And that was the decision was that's how far the food could handle. And your delivery person had to come back. So if you sent them too far, they weren't coming back for a while. The big change obviously now is you can send out deliveries all day long. The delivery person's not coming back, you're going to the next order, so your distance can go further, which is great because you can open up your areas. Then you also have to remember though, your food is traveling longer. Some of the sites allow delivery people to take 2 orders. So they'll pick up 2 orders, then go one place, and then they'll go to you. You kind of lost your guest experience, your brand, your trained delivery person, knock on the door, take 2 steps backwards, so you're not intimidating, say hello, talk about your brand and so forth. So that's kind of shifted. Containers have changed tremendously over the years. So they help with delivery, but everybody knows you can't order fries to go.
How about on the side of getting things to you, on sort of your ingredients, what's fresh to you, that shift?
This is New York City, it's just continuing to be a nightmare. But, it did help with congestion pricing, less people want to come into my store to deliver. That's been good.
And we each
Other joke.
say what our one TaskRabbit skill would be if we were on the app ourselves. Mine would be absolutely nothing, because I have no physical skills at all. But Josh, what would you do? What would you call on TaskRabbit?
Yeah, no idea.
Do you have a TaskRabbit
Asshole.
skill?
God, this is pathetic.
Yeah.
I would filibuster Friday with you and talk forever.
I wanted to respond to something else before, but may I?
Controller, do you have a TaskRabbit skill?
I write personalized songs and poems for birthdays and anniversaries, but it's being totally replaced by AI, I'm afraid.
Dave, you'll have the last word, and then we'll take 2 questions, I think.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to say, I appreciate, Josh kind of acknowledging all the different gains that we have made, right? But I just really want to remind everybody that happened through a lot of organizing and a lot of struggle and a lot of sacrifice by thousands and thousands of drivers. And all of it should have never have been necessary. We never have called this the gig economy. The companies have used that term, and they did it primarily in order to lower the expectation of what workers should be entitled to out of this job. We have had to work ourselves way out of that hole in order to build something that could be more dignified. And even then, people really struggle. Like I don't, this is driving and delivery work, but I'm gonna speak for driving. Driving is a really difficult job. Drivers are 30 times more likely to be killed on the job. They're 80 times more likely to be robbed on the job. They don't have any security on this job. Even with Uber and Lyft, we haven't really seen that the dangers on this job have come down so much, compared to street hailing, yellow cabs, for example. And within those dangers, they work, 6 to 7 days a week, holidays, weekends, late nights, all the hours that other people are trying to live out a leisurely life, that is possible because of the men and women that we represent and the work that they put in. And even up until last year, we had to have massive protests against Uber and Lyft for trying to game the same minimum pay rules that, yes, we won them in 2019, but the companies continue to try to game them. There's a Bloomberg News investigation which found that they tried to game them in order to basically secure over $200 million for themselves. And so, this is a job that is difficult enough. You're dealing with strangers every day. You're dealing with the chaos of the city every single hour. There's so much that the companies could do to humanize the workers and make their lives better. Because without them, you have no profit. And I understand that all these companies are very quick. There's news that Uber is co-investing $375 million toward autonomous vehicle and food delivery robots. And when I read that news, all I could think, and this is supposed to produce something like 500, robo-taxis. And all I could think was, Mike, do you know how much, what could happen if that money was reinvested into the workers instead of these driverless vehicles? This is an industry that still needs a lot of humanizing. And the reason that our path has been so difficult and the struggle has taken so long is because they built the real platform is all the ways in which they have evaded labor law and other industry-specific regulations in order to oversaturate, in order to underpay, and really create more hurdles for workers than have ever been necessary.
And I do think, as the councilman was saying too, and Josh, I'll let you take the first answer on the Q&A, and you can add in a bit of a response to that as well. But I think that there's, the legislation is ongoing, and this has been a sort of pull and push process throughout. Maybe we'll take the first question. Come up to Ben with over here.
Please. That's Lena Khan.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Cruz. My question really is trying to represent the Gen Z aspect of the gig economy. Just like the second speaker was saying, we don't really talk about it like a gig economy. If you're talking about cars, more so on TaskRabbit. Thinking about Craigslist, the AI aspect of international.
Come up to Ben with over here.
Please. That's Lena Khan.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Cruz. My question really is trying to represent the Gen Z aspect of the gig economy. Just like the second speaker was saying, we don't really talk about it like a gig economy. If you're talking about cars, more so on TaskRabbit. Thinking about Craigslist, the AI aspect of international forces not being regulated, right? We have an industry of gig economy on a site. So let's say who's regulating Craigslist, where you see those Grubhub links that are going to these apps that tell people click on this, get your data collected on the back end, and then your identity can be taken with all these tasks they can do in the future. So right now we're investing in our city for humans to do all this, but robo-taxis are the future, right? My kids will be in these cars that are not going to be led with humans. So we're investing, we're putting a lot of our money into something that we know is going to be dissolved. And in my humblest opinion, I don't think we're using foresight. We're just doing the same old things, trying to find a new, outcome, and it doesn't seem like we're leading. We're supposed to lead. So I'm just very happy, but I really am afraid that we're not looking at quantum computing. That's the next one. Artificial intelligence has been here for over 20 years. The EU has been regulating it. We just haven't in our city. So in economy, can we talk about foreign forces entering our gig economy and our citizens or our residents or whatever we want to say about undocumented people also working this, but that they're not being regulated properly and that we have citizens who are getting hurt with the gig economy, but we're not having it seen in the criminal system. We're not having it seen in our system. I need to be real. We need to be real in the United States about our citizenry and the gig economy being a danger to it today. But
Thank you.
okay, thank you, sorry.
Josh, maybe can you talk a bit about what Uber sees as the future of this kind of work in the city?
I just wanted to respond a little bit first. I do think we have to humanize the workforce, and I think one way to do that is to try to work together on how the city adopts autonomous vehicles and what that path looks like, and how we take into consideration the 200,000 drivers, TLC licensed drivers who are on the road today, and to make sure that it's not they're not displaced or have unfair competition quickly, and that we figure out a way for a dignified retirement, or we figure out a way for a dignified transition. So I do think that it's an important question. I do think it's a path for perhaps not having the same level of struggle that was talked about over the previous 10 years. I would also just like to respond to a couple of points. Driving is not is unsafe, but black car drivers in New York, which is mostly Uber and Lyft drivers, have the lowest crash rates per miles driven of any vehicle on the road. And I take pride in the fact that our drivers are, in that way, some of the safest drivers on the road. I also, the TLC data is clear that drivers are working close to 35 hours a week. I think there's a path towards figuring out how we make sure that drivers can earn a good living as we turn into a more autonomous world, because those vehicles have a good opportunity to reduce the amount of crashes even more. But we have to work together to figure that out. And I hope that instead of having the struggles we've had in the past, that we figure out a way to sit down and chart out that path in the right way.
And I think that I think you're referring to deliveries to crashes, accidents.
No, I was referring to drivers being victims of assault.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's something we can work together on.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, the 35 hours is trip time. It's not your work time.
Online time.
Right. So no, it's with passenger time. I mean, there are plenty of drivers who work closer to 60 hours a week.
There are definitely drivers who work 70 hours a week. There are definitely drivers who work 15 hours a week.
And I just really want to plus one, the push here for thinking about how we would regulate the shift to autonomous vehicles in advance. Like we know that's coming, and yet we haven't set it up. And of course, there are some actors, like Uber, that have, workers in the ecosystem. Elon Musk would like to have Tesla own the robo-taxi space, and he will be glad to pay zero attention whatsoever to any of the for-hire drivers in the system. So what we want is a model that regulates it in a way that pays attention to safety, which kind of has to be first, but also which pays attention to the workforce and thinks about what that transition looks like. It's just, that's hard to do, right? Everyone kind of wants to just go like this. But the moment is now to say what would the rules be for thinking about how that would work, both from a worker point of view and from a customer and safety point of view. And it would be great to do it in advance, when we could do it based on the set of principles we would share for it. rather than let, whatever the Musks of the world grab the space first and then do our best to fight them out.
I think one more question. This is Sabina, actually.
We learned
City official.
through our business services and actually work with some of our neighborhood development partners. There's a growing number of neighborhood laundromats that are relying on app-based drivers to meet their customer demand for pickup and delivery for small business to maintain a fleet, even a small fleet in New York City. Both driver costs and insurance costs, increasingly high liability insurance rates. And so it solves a problem for the neighborhood laundries, but there's not a group like the Hospitality Association representing neighborhood laundromats. So there's not advocacies or even insight into what the fees, the rates are. And I'm really curious to understand how we can know and what are the areas of small business and neighborhood businesses where the apps are also seeing new needs, new business opportunities, and are attempting to kind of penetrate that small business market.
Yeah, maybe. Oh,
Sorry, I haven't heard that before, but it sounds like a great new business opportunity for us, so I'd love to talk more about it. I will say you mentioned insurance, which I didn't get a chance to mention, and nobody got a chance to mention. I do think that there's a huge opportunity for everybody on this panel, the restaurant industry, the drivers. I know the Tax Workers Alliance has mentioned a worker-owned mutual insurance company before, but the affordability crisis in New York, gig economy, restaurants, taxi drivers, Uber drivers, is it's driven by housing costs first and foremost.
Legal immigration.
On that list is the cost of insurance for all sides of our platform. And you mentioned the word insurance, and I'm going in a totally different direction, but that's okay. The panel's been like that this morning. So, I think we really need to, all of us should sit down after this and figure out a way to fight back against the rising insurance costs New Yorkers face. New York, more than any other state, more of our dollars are going towards insurance costs. And it's going to be really detrimental to small businesses. It's going to be detrimental to our drivers. It's going to be detrimental to taxi drivers, medallion owners, and restaurant owners as well. And so, in addition to sitting down and talking about the AV transformation, I think we really do need to sit down and figure out how to lower insurance and liability costs. But I do want to also talk about, how we can get involved with delivering clothes, because I think it's a great opportunity, and we can figure out a way to work together on that as well.
Maybe you could just kind of close out.
Some laundry insurance.
Right. But I wonder, Johnson, who are you hearing from on gig issues? Are you hearing issues like that from small business owners? Or are you hearing more constituents who are workers or people who are experiencing gig work on the streets?
I'm hearing a lot from the deliveristas. They're one of our most highly engaged that we speak to on issues, that speak to us about the worker front and how to improve workplace safety. I will say that there's a concern, right? Everything is replaceable right now. You have technologies being cashiers, right? You have Waymo coming to New York City now. So we're going to have autonomous vehicles. Everything is replaceable. And I'm sure at some point we're going to have, cleaners that manually does the cleaning function and that now begins to sew, right? I mean, at some point, what's the workplace going to look like? Is it all going to be replaced by robots? What do we do?
Tune in for our next panel.
No, you can stop it, you idiot.
That is something that we ought to consider and get ahead of versus being reactionary to this market. Right now, we're very reactionary to this growing market that is unmistakably moving at the speed of light. And we have to make something happen there.
Thank you to all the panelists. Really appreciate all your time and a good discussion. And thank you very much for being here. There's more coffee and food, so please.
Worked for DoorDash. I've been working for 3 years. It's all right. It's all right, but it actually has gotten more difficult because of the legislating by City Council and the sanctuary city law Brad Lander signed. Yeah.
This is my colleague Matan.
Hello there. Nice to meet you too. Yeah.
DoorDash worker who's against sanctuary city.
Yeah.
And against, I guess, also against minimum pay.
Yeah. The thing is, minimum pay. It does sound nice, but the thing is, you heard them. They made it actually more harder to work for food apps now. But the thing that made it worse was there's all the illegal immigration. It's when Biden reversed all of Trump's orders and what you call it, Trump's I guess executive orders and allowed a massive influx to come in. And since then, we all had to pay for it. And also, we had to build the infrastructure, fund the hotel, fund the homeless service providers, provide them with e-bikes, provide them with the infrastructure, the battery charging. And that's another thing. I work for DoorDash, but I don't use an e-bike. I use a real bike.
Oh, really?
You don't need an e-bike to do this job. And the thing is, instead of like I don't know what Josh is going to do here with the Uber. He's going to provide him with e-bikes. He's going to be providing him with like real bikes.
Oh, did you ask him? Have you
not yet, but I'll talk to him. I got a lot to say to him.
Have you met Josh before?
Very good.
No, it's the first time I've seen him in public. Yeah. You're my ex. Your boss?
Oh, yeah, I do
it's
work
your boss,
with him.
yeah.
He does have to run out of here because he has
Well, just ask him. I just want to ask him one quick question.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're uncomfortable with what I want to say. So.
No, I mean, he's heard it all before.
Yeah.
Like, people can disagree.
Yeah, I know.
But also, he does have to get to another event that
I'm pretty sure I know he has to go do another protest instead of doing his job as controller.
Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That's all he's done. He's just activism, mostly activism. Yeah. Doing activism with like delivery worker unions, those Los Deliveristas, Workers' Justice Project, and they're also responsible for all the e-bike for the existential e-bike medicine in the street, and also for the lithium-ion batteries. Everybody's way too dependent on them.
So you're like very opposed to the e-bikes. That's something that you feel like should
Yes, e-bike. Also, actually, no, I'm not. No, they exist. People want to use them. That's their right to. The thing is, like, they're a lot of them are using illegal batteries. Even the whiz bikes, those batteries are not UL certified. I see them. Those are the e-bikes that the DOT was providing to delivery people to replace the e-bikes with the legal cartridges.
The city DOT.
Yes, our city DOT. Yeah.
But you prefer to use. So do you just do like one borough, or like what's the area?
Well, that's the thing. Because of the minimum wage, they made it impossible to like schedule anywhere you want. It took away the ability. Because I used to be able to work in let's say Bensonhurst. I used to work in Manhattan most of the time because of illegal immigration. The illegal immigrant influx that came here, and they're staying in old hotels while they're here. And there's like thousands of them out there. There's like, I documented videos on it. There's actually more e-bikes than there seems to be more e-bikes than cars in the street.
Oh, when you say you document videos, are you on social media?
Yes.
Or, where can I find you on social media?
Impunity City on Twitter, on X. Impunity City on X.
Yeah, let me find it. Sorry, we'll say it again.
Impunity City on X.
Impunity City.
Impunity, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I have a YouTube channel, JQLLC.
I don't know what's being redeemed.
Got it. JQLLC.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
So you've been doing DoorDash for 3 years. Do you think you're going to keep doing it? Or?
Yeah, for a little bit.
Yeah.
For a little bit. Hopefully I'll get some better. I'll win the lottery. but yeah, this is what I'm doing now. It's with I've been doing bike messenger work all my life, and this is the natural.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was curious about that. Like for people who have been doing bike messenger and like that is such a big industry and culture, has that changed a lot?
I think so, because I haven't heard much. I don't even know if many of these messenger companies exist anymore. There used to be thousands of them.
Yeah, I used to see it with I don't know if you were one of the people with the big chains, but I feel like I used to see bike messengers all the time.
I was one that was the big change.
It's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I have to run to the next event.
Right.
But I'm going to go ahead.
That's great. And
Hey Josh, you're the Uber CEO, something like that, or the Uber communications guy, whatever you are. What do you think of all the illegal immigrants that are working for your platform?
So in New York, the TLC has a daily.
I'm not talking about DLC. I'm talking about the food app workers.
So in New York, the TLC has an active list, and what we do is based on if the driver's on the active list or not. Those are the folks who can work.
Yeah, but it seems to be just a food app platform.
How you doing?
Christy,
So Josh is not going to answer the question either. And Brad Atlanta tried to accuse me of being xenophobic. These guys are just pricks. They really are. They're pricks.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Let's find that picture of that illegal immigrant worker. I guess I'm not going to have time. I'll go figure these two know each other. I'll let Josh run away. I can't catch up to these people my age. That's about it. The thing is, I see it, Brad. You know what? Throughout this whole thing, you guys mentioned immigration, but you never say the word illegal. Why is that?
A lot of other things are more illegal.
Yes, there are. Like enabling this culture and this system. You have a nice day, Bradford. I might as well steal some pastries. I think they're all hard. This is New York, Rome, and Puny City now more than ever.